everyone. It's Monday, April 27th, and we are starting our second to last week of distance learning. This time next week, we will have 1 week left of work, and then it'll be officially summer after the end of that week. So you've got 2 more weeks together, hoping that some of these restrictions on us seeing each other will end soon so that I can see you guys and hug you, because I do have an announcement to make. Mr. Phelan and I in June are going to be moving to Greenville, South Carolina. So I will not be at Garrett next year. I know it makes me really sad because I love seeing former students that I had when they go up to the next grade. Just to ask how they're doing and just to see them every day, it makes me really excited. And so I'm sad that I won't be there to see you, but I'll come back and visit. I'll come poke my head, and I'll come see Miss Moore and Miss Becker, and because that's, or Miss Stanner, because that's who you will probably have next year. But yeah, I'm really sad. So I'm trying to make this last month of May that I have in Augusta a good one, and hopefully I'll get to see you guys before I do move. And we've got the surprise coming up. We've got the caterpillars that should be coming this week. So I'll get to bring those to you and show you how to work with those and do all of that. It'll be a fun end of the year project, and we'll be able to get all your stuff from the classroom, any work that you guys have. We have the pizza boxes that you take home, all your stuff that you've done throughout the year. That'll come home. That'll get to come home to you too. I'll get to either deliver those or you'll come by the school and get them. So a lot going on, a lot to do these last 2 weeks, but we're going to go ahead and go on to the next chapter in our book. Let's see where it is. Here we go. So we are on chapter 9, Something Different About Mrs. Jewls. So let's find out what's different about Miss Jewls. The children returned from Christmas vacation. On each desk were 2 knitting needles and a hunk of yarn. Today we are going to learn how to knit, said Mrs. Jewls. She showed the class how it was done. See, you stick this needle through here, then wrap this around this like this, stick this through this, pull this like this, and then you stick this here. Any questions? Everyone stared at her. Good, said Mrs. Jewls. I want everybody to make socks. Okay, get started. Damien looked at his knitting needles. He didn't have a clue. He looked back at Mrs. Jewls. Now, more than ever, he was sure she was somehow different. She was sitting at her desk knitting and eating bolognios. Damien couldn't remember Mrs. Jewls ever eating a bologna before. A bologna was an Oreo cookie, except instead of the white part, there was a round hunk of bologna. Miss Mush invented them. Hey, Mac, whispered Damien, does Mrs. Jewls seem different to you? She's fat, said Mac. That's not a nice thing to say, said Damien. I didn't say it to Mrs. Jewls. I didn't go, hey, Mrs. Jewls, you're fat. Mrs. Jewls cleared her throat as she stood up. She walked around the room. Very nice, DJ, she said. You're doing fine, Rondi. She stopped at Joe's desk. Oh, Joe, she gushed. Look, everybody, I want you to see Joe's sock. She held it up. Isn't it the most beautiful sock you ever saw? It was a great sock. Everybody oohed and awed. Joe was as surprised as anyone. He didn't know he knew how to make socks, but the boy was born to knit. Mrs. Jewls started to cry. I love this sock, she sobbed. Uh-oh, said Kathy. I think she's finally flipped out. I love you, Kathy, said Mrs. Jewls. She looked around the room. I love all of you. She put her hand on Kathy's desk. I love this desk, she said. I love the blackboard. I love the clock on the wall. There was a ruler on the floor. Mrs. Jewls picked it up. I love this ruler, she declared. Hey, that's mine, said Dana. But, that's okay, Mrs. Jewls. You can have it. I don't want your ruler, Dana, said Mrs. Jewls, handing it to her. You want my pair of scissors? Offered Sherry. Don't give her anything sharp, warned Kathy. Mrs. Jewls wiped away her tears and smiled at the class. I'm going to miss all of you very much, she said. Are you going away? Asked Damien. Yeah, to the loony bin, whispered Kathy. Are you sick? Asked Eric Evans. No, I'm not sick, said Mrs. Jewls. In fact, I'm better than I've ever been. She beamed. I'm going to have a baby. Everyone gasped. Damien couldn't believe it. He was so happy he jumped out of his seat and hugged Mrs. Jewls. She was soon surrounded by all her students, even Kathy wanting to hug her. Today is my last day here, Mrs. Jewls told her students. My doctor doesn't want me walking up and down 30 flights of stairs every day. I wasn't even supposed to come today, but I just had to say goodbye. I thought you were getting fat, said Mac, but I didn't want to say anything. Thank you, Max, said Mrs. Jewls. You are very considerate. Can I touch your stomach? Asked Stephen. Mrs. Jewls laughed. Sure, she said. The children took turns touching her stomach. What are you going to name your baby? Asked Allison. I don't know yet, said Mrs. Jewls. What do you think? Well, if she's a girl, said Allison, I think you should name her Rainbow Sunshine. That's a nice name, said Mrs. Jewls. And if he's a boy? Buckethead, said Allison. She didn't like boys. If he's a boy, you should name him Jet Rocket, said Joe. Jet Rocket Jewls, mused Mrs. Jewls. That has a nice ring to it. And what if she's a girl? Cootie Face, said Joe. There's a fly going around, guys. I'm sorry. Mrs. Jewls laughed. So let me get this straight, she said. If he's a boy, I'll name him Buckethead. Right, said Allison and Rondi. And if she's a girl, I'll name her Cootie Face. Right, said Joe and John. Damien laughed. He knew Mrs. Jewls was only joking. At least he hoped she was. Terence placed his palm flat against Mrs. Jewls' stomach. Hey, he exclaimed, the dude kicked me. Suddenly, Damien felt very sad. He was going to miss her a lot. He wiped a tear from his eye. It's unfair, he shouted. We finally come back to Wayside School after being gone for so long, and now you're leaving us. I have to, said Mrs. Jewls. I know, whined Damien. You have to make sure that you and your baby are healthy, but it still isn't fair. I think you'll like your substitute teacher, said Mrs. Jewls. I spoke to him over the vacation. He seems like a very nice man. A man? Asked Damien. Cool. They all thought it was pretty neat to have a man teacher. Yes, said Mrs. Jewls. His name is Mr. Gorf. Mrs. Gorf has a husband. Mr. Gorf. Mrs. Gorf is the one who turned kids into apples. So hopefully Mr. Gorf doesn't do that too. So Miss Jewls is leaving. She'll probably come back after she has a baby, but she is leaving. So there's going to be a new teacher around, which will be interesting to hear how that goes. I am not leaving because I'm having a baby. We're leaving because Mr. Phelan is getting a new job in Greenville. But if I was, I would let you guys know, but I'm not. So yeah, a lot of news to drop on you guys today. Miss you, miss everybody. Hope you're doing okay. Keep in touch with me on Class Tag. Send videos, pictures. I got a video from Thaddeus, got some pictures from Elijah. Feel free to just say hi. Got a video from Channing. She's doing great. She had a great birthday last week. I know Taylor did too. So feel free to send me some pictures and keep in touch because I miss your faces. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, guys.